Anime Studio Debut 8 has powerful vector-based draw, paint, and fill tools. To be able to use these tools, you have to be on frame 0 in the timeline, and you also have to be using a vector layer. Now, if you're not currently on a vector layer, you have to go to New Layer and then select Vector to get started. The first tool we're going to look at is the Add Point tool, and I can click and drag to quickly create a shape. And where these points are showing up, these indicator points, I'm able to weld to those points and create a fillable shape if I have auto welds turned on. Now autofill was also turned on, so this automatically filled my shape with the styles that I have on the styles palette, in this case a green fill and a black stroke. And if sharp corners was turned on, it will automatically create a shape with sharp corners. Now if I turn it off, it will create a smooth shape. Now the next tool I'm going to show you is the freehand tool. And the freehand tool is very similar to a pen or pencil tool. It has different options at the top. If use pen pressure is checked, it will use pressure sensitivity if you're working with a pen tablet. You can also choose from different brushes as well. So I can go in here and select a brush. And I can also use the line width tool if I wanted to then click on this brush and thicken the line. One of the new features that has been added in Anime Studio Debut 8 is rounded end caps, and I can show you quickly what that means. Previously, the end caps were square, so if I zoom in here, especially if I change this to a basic brush, it'll be a little bit easier to see. Now if I use the rounded end caps option and do the same stroke and make it thick, you can see that the end caps are now round. Now another neat feature in Anime Studio Debut 8 is that now you can sketch much more freely than before. You can actually just draw an outline and create some overlapping lines and then go in and fill this. So that makes it really easy and allows you to sketch freely as you desire, and then you can go in and actually cut off these overlapping lines with the Delete Edge tool. So I can click and remove these lines. So I'm going to add a new vector layer here to show you this feature a little bit further. So what I can do is I can use the freehand tool and just quickly fill these shapes where the overlapping lines cross, and I can use the Delete Edge tool to cut off these overlapping lines. So that makes it very easy to sketch faces, heads, characters, etc. Gives you a lot of flexibility when creating your own art in Anime Studio. And the next tool that I wanted to show you as part of the drawing tools is the Draw Shape tool. Now this Draw Shape tool lets you create shapes based on these presets, and if you hold down the Shift key, you can constrain the proportions, so you could create a perfect square, for example. We have an oval, a triangle, a star, an arrow, and a spiral shape as well. And then we also have a scatter brush. Now the scatter brush has these different vector-based patterns that are included as well with the application, or you could create your own. So let's say you wanted to create a brush style based on this red square. All you do is you select it by clicking on it, you go to Edit Copy, and then you go to your scatter brush and select Use Clipboard from the drop-down. And now you can paint using this brush. And what I just did is I rendered a preview, and all you have to do is go to File, Preview, and you can see what your final image in this case, or what your animation at that frame will look like. Now let's say you want to change the color, so you can just use the Select Shape tool, click on a shape, and change the fill while the shape is selected, so to yellow for example, and then if you hold down the Alt key, you can also change the stroke as well. So those are some of the basics on the drawing tools. The next thing that we're going to look at is automatic lip syncing. I'm going to start with a new file, and I'm going to load a mouth from the library. So I'm going to go to the library here, and I'm going to browse to the props folder, mouth sets, and I'm going to choose mouth 1. Okay, so now this mouth has been imported in something called a switch layer. The switch layer folder will automatically animate based on the sound file that I'm going to sync up for it. But switch layers can also be used to animate eyes, hand movements, etc. And they're basically folders that group together these different layers that have been drawn, and you can animate them over time. And we're going to demonstrate this briefly with the mouth folder. So let's say at frame 24, I can right-click the switch layer folder and select L. And then at frame 48, I can select Rest. And so it will switch between these different phonemes at different points in time. And you could do the same with eye shapes. You could have smile, surprised, angry, all these different eye shapes that are pre-drawn, and you can put them in a switch layer folder and then quickly animate between those different shapes. So I'm going to go select those keyframes, hit delete, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to load in a sound clip. You could either go to File, Import Audio File to load an existing file, or you can record your own, which is what I'm going to do. Hi, I'm testing Anime Studio Debut 8. Then I can adjust the pitch.
Hi, I'm testing Anime Studio Debut 8.
Going to add to project. And I'm going to double click my mouth folder. So make sure you hit frame 0. Now if your clip, your sound clip here was not frame 0 when you started recording it, you can just go to the sequencer and move it over to frame 0. What that means is that the sound clip will start at the same time as everything else, in this case at frame 0. So if you wanted the sound clip to start at a later point in time, you could go back to the sequencer and just drag it over. This would be useful if, for example, you have a conversation between two characters and you don't want one character to start talking until frame 80. You would just drag it to frame 80 and then from here on sync it up to the mouth. So I'm going to drag it back to frame 0 because that's what I want to show you. Double click my mouth switch layer and then go to the switch tab, and all I have to do is select testing 2.wave and it will create these keyframes automatically for me. So let me hit playback.
Hi, I'm testing Anime Studio Debut 8.
So that's how easy it was to create a talking character in Anime Studio using the built-in lip syncing feature. Now the next feature that I want to show you is the character wizard. Now the character wizard is a really powerful tool in that it has the different presets for you to choose from, all these different sliders, and you can also import a character with a walk action. So that makes it very easy to quickly create your own walking character. So again, we have these different settings to choose from. We have different components that you can choose from as well. We have different heads, eyes, and mouth shapes, and all the mouths have been set up for lip syncing. And if you look at the eyes, for example, if one is called animated tune, now look at the front view, and you go to the movement tab, that means that those eyes are animated. And on the movement tab, you can see the pre-animated components, in this case blinking eyes. And I can adjust my walk action here. And if I click insert walk action, it will import the character with a pre-animated walk cycle. Now if you're wondering what export all views means, it means if that box is checked, it will export that character with all the different views into your Anime Studio project. And then there's also a randomize button that will automatically choose different parts and components for you to create virtually an endless amount of different characters. Now on the clothing tab, you can choose from long pants or shorts, and you can also choose from a short sleeve shirt or a long sleeve shirt as well. And on the style tab, you can change the skin tone as well as the hair color. A lot of the different head components that you can choose from under heads have been set up to where you can choose your own custom hair color from this style tab as well. And let's say you've created this character and you want to save it for further use. All you have to do is click the plus icon, type in a name, and hit OK. Now, the important thing to note here is that you're saving the current state of that character, and what that means is if you could change the setting, for example, you change the leg length, you'd have to go back in and hit the plus icon again to resave that character. You could override the existing one, but you want to resave it because it only saved that the previous design of that character at that state. So let's say I said select export all views. So now the character gets exported as a switch layer, and we discussed switch layers with the lip syncing feature. And what this means, currently it's in the front view. So if I hit play, I have a walking character. Okay, so let's say I want the character to walk in the front, and at frame 24 I want him to switch to a front 3/4 view. So the character turns. I can just then go to frame 24, right click my switch layer and select front 3/4, and then all I have to do is hit play. And that's how easy it is for me to change this. Now I could drag my character at frame 72. I want the character to be off screen. And if I scrub back through the timeline, I've quickly created this little animation. So that's how easy it is to create your own custom characters using the character wizard in Anime Studio Debut 8. Now, if you're new to Anime Studio Debut 8, you could also launch the beginner's mode, and the beginner's mode has the key tools in Anime Studio. It has rollover descriptions, and if a tool is grayed out, it will tell you why the tool is currently grayed out and what you have to do to be able to use that tool. And if a tool is active, there's also a video that you can watch that will guide you through the tool and how to use it. Now the next feature that I'd like to show you is bone rigging. So we're going to start with just a basic character here, just a star. And we're going to add some bones to the star. Now the first thing we have to do is add a bone layer. And then we're going to click and drag and move this layer into the bone layer so that the vector layer of the star is part of the bone group. And if I collapse this, you'll see that the vector layer is hidden, which indicates that it's part of my bone group. I'm going to use the Add Bone tool, click and drag, and hit the Up key to select that main bone again. And that's the root bone, and that's the one that I want to bind all my other bones to. Okay, hit the Up key again. And now if I use my Manipulate Bones tool at frame 0, I can test out the rig. At frame 1 and beyond, I'm introducing an animation. So let's say I want to quickly animate this character. I just move in the timeline, move some bones around, and that's how quick it is to create a little animation. Now I could go back into my library, and let's say I wanted to add some eyes and a mouth to the star. I'm going to go to the props folder. I'm going to go select an eye set, cartoon eyes, okay, and I'm going to also select a mouth as well. Okay, so now what I have to do is I have to make these components part of my bone group. So I'm going to drag them into my bone group, and I'm going to resize them. So the mouth right now is just too big, does not fit onto the star. I'm going to select the Scale Layer tool, click and drag, change the mouth so it fits more with the size of the star, and then I'm going to do the same for the eye set. Okay, and now I'm doing all of this at frame 0 so I can position my star. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bind the eyes and the mouth to that main bone. All I have to do is select my mouth and now use this Bind Layer tool, click on the star, and now I was able to bind the mouth to that bone. And I'm going to do the same for the eyes as well. And so now if I go back to my bone layer and I change my animation, rotate my star around, you'll see that now that the facial features are moving automatically with that star. Hit play. Okay, so that's how easy it was to do a basic animation using bone rigging. Next step, let's say we want to create our own character. So we're going to move to a little bit more of an advanced tutorial. Still pretty basic, but a bit more advanced than this first example of a star. So I'm going to start out with a head. Double click my layer, head, add a new layer. I'm going to name this body or torso. Okay, and then I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to name it right arm. And now I'm going to add another layer. Now I could add another layer and call it left arm, or could just duplicate this layer, call it left arm, and then move it over here, and then I could flip it. Okay. And then I'm going to add another layer called right leg. I'm going to draw my leg here. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to duplicate this layer and call it left leg. And I'm going to move it over and flip it and position it. Now I'm going to create a bone group, and I'm going to select all the different bones. I can hold down the Command key, or you could hold down the Shift key and select the first layer and the last layer. Move it into your bone group, and I'm going to add some bones. So the first bone I'm going to add is the bone for the body or the torso, the main bone. Then the one for the head, I'm going to select the Up key, or you could also use the Select Bone key to get back to the Select Bone tool to get back to the main bone. And now I'm going to add the bone for the left arm, hit the Up key again, the bone for the right arm. I'm going to do the same for the legs. Okay. So I'm going to test out my rig. So this is at frame 0. Okay. So this is working out pretty well, but I want a lot more flexibility. So one of the things that I could do is I could bind each of the different layers to a bone. So I'm going to do this with the head. So I'm going to select the head layer, and I'm going to select the Bind Layer tool that I showed you earlier with the star when we were binding the facial features to a specific bone. We're doing the same now with the different body parts. So I'm binding the head to this bone, the torso to the main body bone, right arm to right arm, left arm to the left arm bone, right leg to the right leg bone, and left leg to the left leg bone. Now if I go back, I'm able to very quickly create my own animation with this. And I could now also go in and set some constraints. So let's say I don't want the leg to be able to rotate 360 degrees. I could select some angle constraints up here. And you can use your mouse wheel to scrub through these different options, or you can also type in a value as well. And I can just select some basic constraints here for this example, for these bones, and then also for the head. And now this main bone is the one that we rotate around. And I can go in now and select my bone layer again, use the Manipulate Bones tool, and I can quickly make my character move. And I can play this back by just hitting the play button. Now the next feature that I want to show you is the automatic image tracing. Start out with a new page here. I'm going to go to File, Import, Image, and I'm going to select this scan that I have. Now this is a scanned image of a paper drawing, and I want to convert it to vector art so that I can quickly animate it. So all I have to do is go to Draw, Trace Image. I can adjust some settings. For example, I could fatten the lines if I wanted to, adjust how much detail I want to show, and then all I have to do is click OK, and it will trace the image for me. And now what I can do is I can go in here and I can fill these different shapes with colors. So let's say I want that character to have blue eyes, I can go in and do that. So I can also go ahead and select a skin color for her as well. I can color in her hair. So let's say I want to give this character blonde hair. I can just go in and select yellow and click and fill these different shapes. I go to File, Preview, I can see what that looks like. Okay, so let's say you've created drawings of different heads that you've done on paper that you scanned in that you want to convert to vector art. Now you've done that and you're thinking, well, what's next? Well, you could create your own drawing, you could draw your own body and rig it, or you could choose a character wizard body and just attach the head. And that's what I'm going to show you next. So I'm going to go into the character wizard and I'm going to select the girl preset. I'm going to just import the front view, uncheck export all views, and all I'm going to do now is to enlarge her, and then I'm going to have a look at this bone structure. There's a head folder. I'm going to delete the entire head folder, and then I'm going to move my vector image into that head, into the bone group. Move it up towards the top because I wanted to sit on top of the other layers, and then I'm going to use the scale layer tool to resize the head so that it fits better with the overall size of the body. Okay. Alright, I'm going to zoom in, File, Preview, and that's how easy it is to create my own little character. And because I imported a character using the character wizard, this character was imported with a pre-animated walk cycle. So if I hit play, I've quickly created my own walking character. I could also again bind this layer to the head bone because it gives you a lot of flexibility. Now I can quickly tilt my head around and hit play. And again, because we're working with vector art, you could also change the facial movements. For example, you could have her open her mouth at frame 24 just by dragging some points, and at frame 48 she's going to open her mouth wider. And then we're going to repeat this at frame 72. Her mouth is going to be wide open. And if I zoom out and hit play, you'll see how quick it was for me to create my own animation using a scan that I had originally done on paper. Now, when you're done, you can export to different formats, including QuickTime or Flash, as well as AVI under Windows, or you could upload directly to Facebook and YouTube right from within the program. And if you uploading to YouTube, you can also go to your Preferences tab and you could save your username and password right to this Preferences setting, so that will make it very easy to quickly upload your own creations to YouTube.